Hey everybody, it's Pandy, and I'm playing World of Tanks. This is part 2 of my rapid fire British tanks starting of series of videos, things. Just fair warning, there's gonna be a lot of flashy lights, so just, if you can't do flashing lights, just don't watch. I'm sorry. But if you guys have watched the first video, awesome. If you haven't, go check out the first video. It'll make more sense. Just trust me, there's going to be a little linky link thing on the left side of the video. Just trust me, watch them, love them, and stuff. Now this video is going to be on the Cruiser Mark II A10. If you remember from the first video, I talked about the British War Offices developing two different types of tanks, or wanting to have two different types of tanks. Ones that are mobile and fast, and ones that are infantry support vehicles. Well, the Mark II was developed as an infantry support vehicle. Everything between the Mark I and Mark II were basically the same. The only main difference was the Mark II had the machine gun's turrets removed and had extra armor just bolted right onto the front of it with like bolts and duct tape. Okay, maybe not duct tape, but close enough. Now, machine gun was still added to the front of the chassis for extra firepower against infantry without losing the protection against anti-tank rifles, and the main gun was the same main gun from the Mark I to the Mark II, the good old 2-pounder. Now, the prototype for the Mark II was completed within a couple of months of the A9. It was decided during the trials that it was no longer needed for infantry support, but as a heavy cruiser in conjunction with the A9. An order of 175 vehicles was put up for production in July 1938, and again with an additional order basically for a completion total of 175 in December of 1939. Now, the Cruiser Mark II took part in the French and North African campaigns. Records in regards to their combat performance was mixed. The reliability of the suspension system in desert conditions was questioned heavily, even for the Mark II. The Mark II performed extremely well against German armor in defense of Tubach. The tank was slowly withdrawn from service in favor of the cruisers as they started being deployed in larger numbers and started replacing losses and all that. Within World of Tanks, just saying, the Mark II, the Cruiser Mark II, was disappointing-ish. Again, the firepower was the 40mm pom-pom, and it's decent and fun depending on the tank that it's thrown onto. It was enjoyable on the Mark I, and it was very enjoyable on the Mark III. You can even get the derp cannon on those biatch, but it fired extremely slowly, and at worst, it was not good for sniping. It felt worse. I don't know how I can explain that. It's just, it would one-shot a lot of targets. It was good for that, but it was incapable of the sniping, and I'm a sniper all to itself. I like to have good accuracy and be able to shoot long range. Pom-pom was a better option in regards to this, and also the derp came with an 11-second reload. Why? So I went with the faster cannon just for the pure survivability against the smaller, faster tanks that might actually be able to get around me up close and personal. Up and close and personal is like what I like. Even in some of the higher tier battles, on the other hand, the pom-pom was a little weak against those targets. I mean, it was good enough for tanks, light tanks of that tier, but once you started talking about some of the medium tanks, you started having real problems against them. The only other thing that I would say is a problem with the pom-pom in the higher tier battles was its unreliability to be able to do damage to heavy tanks. I should have brought HE rounds along with me, but I'm again the type that refuses to carry HE rounds anywhere I go. I'm not going after any bunkers or infantry, I'm going after tanks, so I'm carrying AP rounds. The bottom line, the pom-pom on the Cruiser Mark II is good enough, but it's not really impressive. The other options were even disappointing or more depressing. I didn't like them too much. So I went with the pom-pom. Yeah. Now the armor on the Mark II was better than its older brother. It still needed it still was a light tank generally, so it didn't get anything in like the mean levels amounts of armor that you would usually start seeing at the tier 4 and 5 ranges. However, I will say that it managed pretty well against a lot of the smaller autocannons out there. Pointing right at them, you got the hope of having some pretty decent protection and deflections from the machine gun like turrets out there. But being a light tank, you automatically had to assume that you're going to get penetrated, no questions asked and no refunds. I mean, the armor was okay. Again, not impressing. It was depressing from time to time when you got into the higher tier battles, but generally, against tanks of lower tier, you tend to fare pretty well. Now, the mobility on the Cruiser Mark II was the most disappointing part about it. It was supposed to be a light tank, but without the heavy cannon and armor as your counterparts as a tier 3. It's supposed to be a light tank, but you were slower than some of the other tier 3s out there that are medium tanks. You don't have the heavy cannon or armor to be able to back up that mobility. I mean, you had to rely heavily on the mobility as a light tank to make the best of anything. On this tank, however, it simply didn't have that pick up and go it needed to be a light tank. I mean, you can kind of haul the mail at a downhill slope, but it is a slower pace, of course. It's not a hot rod by any means, and it was very disappointing that I wasn't able to get the mobility that I like. So, just bottom line, the thing that I really hated most about this tank is the lack of mobility. I'm just saying. Overall, the Mark II was disappointing and depressing, and I was not too thrilled about this tank. It's not one of those tanks that would have some decency in the higher tier battles once you get into them. I mean, you can kind of get the job done and you can grind your way through the tank. As long as potentially you were the highest tank in the tier range, like literally there's like 2 tier 3s and everyone else is 2s and 1s, you did okay. It wasn't so bad. The mobility doesn't really hurt you as much in those. But once you get into the battles where as a tier 3 you were the lowest tier, that's when you got fucked royalty, because you just didn't have the go. You didn't have any movement and you were pretty much useless as a scout. By any means, it wasn't a bad tank. It's just one of those tanks that you kind of had to stick your hand out kind of like in a flat disc type of way and go like, how was the tank? It's not so good. You could just shake that hand a little bit. Now we get into that part of the video where I get to give away some gold. Now, since this is a rapid fire video type of thing, series thing, for the cruiser tanks, one person out of all the 4 videos will end up winning 6 months of premium or equivalent prices for the North American, European, or C server. Yeah, C server have no package. I said equivalent, damn it. To be picked, you must just post a comment in any one of the cruiser videos, or cruiser 1, 2, 3, or 4. Maybe about the video question, which is, which of the lower tier tanks do you like best? Mine, it has to be the Mini Mouse. I call mine the Bismarck, and Warcrim can testify that it is the Bismarck. I mean, the armor, gun, and the tractor engine is lovable. I love it all. And my inner Korean comes out when I go like, ooh, look at the little tank. Just like I would say, oh, look at the kitty cat. So cute, cute. I love the tank insanely, and it's just fun and boss and all that good stuff. And if you guys ever get platooned up with anyone that has one, just get someone with like a Cruiser 3 and just push them around and just the victory push. Just push for victory. Zzz, 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 or something. I don't know. I'm just talking. I'm rambling at this point. I am thirsty. Oh, much better. Alright, so this is it. I thank you guys for watching. I am Pandy. And good hunting. Oh, fuck you, physics.